Yeah, I started that about 2 years ago because, well, from going out in the gay scene since I was about like 17, 18, there's always been like drag queens around, and I never really liked them at first because you have like a really good song playing, then all of a sudden they start to chime in with some sort of comment. I just thought, can you just stop? Because I just want to really enjoy the song instead. And I didn't really understand the fascination behind it. And it started to get really popular, but I never really paid much attention to the song, saw it all the time. And then I started to like, really look into it and look at all the things that go into it as well. And I got really interested by this whole idea that these men like to dress up as women and perform. And I wanted to see what was so fascinating about it and why they were so interested. So like, I know a few people who've done it and I spoke to them. So I thought the best way for me to learn about it would be to do it myself. Because I prefer to be a bit more hands-on and a bit in-depth like that. And I didn't realise how many skills actually go into it. And it was really strange because I just looked in the mirror and I was like, I look like my mum. And that was the first thought I had. The first time it was like that, and then I just carried on like practicing like constantly all the time. And so part of like drag makeup is obviously it's really exaggerated. So if you've got eyebrows, you normally have to get rid of them. So you block your brows, and I was doing that, and it was really difficult to do it at first. So I've actually lost quite a bit of my eyebrow that I can tell, but other people wouldn't be able to since doing that as well. I tried Pritt Stick first, but it turns out I was doing it wrong. Because I was putting on the Pritt Stick, and then I was putting on primer over it. No, sorry, I was putting on primer first, and then I was putting the Pritt Stick over it then. But I realised that made it too slippery and it wouldn't dry, so I had to not prime my eyebrows. And so I had like eyebrow plastic first, and that was a nightmare to take off. Like I literally tried nail varnish on it as well, and that still wouldn't remove it. So I ended up using Pritt Stick instead, and that was a lot easier and a lot better on my eyebrows than the eyebrow plastic. And with the eyebrow plastic as well, it tended to melt halfway through on my face as well, because of the heat from my face as well, so it wasn't really the best thing to use. So it was all about learning how to do different things like that. And then I also used to, in college, I learned how to like knit and crochet. So I started to bring that into it as well, by creating my own costumes and crocheting them, because it was one of them things, like when I'm watching TV, I really struggle to pay attention to it if I'm not doing something else at the same time. So I thought, how can I actually do something that I enjoy and bring it into my work at the same time? So I decided to bring like my crocheting and my knitting into there, so making my own like dresses out of them, out of like wool and stuff like that. And there's a theory called optimal arousal, which is where it's something that requires low concentration or it has low stimulus. It's not that you have a low attention span, it's actually that you need to be doing other stuff to stay engaged at the same time. It's sort of like, say if you're taking a test and you need to turn off all like music, TV, you can't leave that on there, that's because it's a high stimulus. So you need to be fully concentrating, but when you're watching TV, you don't really tend to concentrate as much. So I was like reading about that the other day, because I just thought I just had a really bad attention span, which probably still do to be fair. But I found out like even if I watch something, I'd be on my phone for half the time, no one actually, I'd look up and like 20 minutes later I wouldn't know what's going on. So I thought about how I could like actually watch it, because a lot of my research actually comes from watching TV and seeing how characters are portrayed and how reality TV is staged and set up as well. So I needed stuff that I keep being engaged with that at the same time. I watched a lot of RuPaul, quite like a lot of the local queens as well. There's Mother Tucker, and I've seen her in quite a few stuff, because I've been to quite a few shows and she's really good. And there was one that I saw in the last show that I went to, and I can't remember her name because I don't think she actually said it. Oh, Ellis Atlantis. He's really talented. He's actually from Bradford as well, which is where I'm from. So I remember like one day I saw something on Facebook about him, because I never really heard of him before. Then all of a sudden he was this big Instagram star, and he'd been doing stuff like Brazil and all over the place as well. And I thought that was really cool. And what else was there? And then I quite like Maria Abramovich. She's really like committed to her art. Like I'm not gonna say I'm as committed as she is at all, but I really like the way that she like examines the relationship between the audience and the artist, because I found it really interesting as well, because it's sort of like, if, well, depending on the audience, but they'll sort of do whatever you tell them to do, because they think it's part of the performance, and because they're supposed to do that. And then I was looking at Brian Don Chalkley as well, and it was really interesting just to see the sort of stuff that I don't actually like. Like, because I looked at his work, I could understand it, but I wasn't really like his biggest fan. Like, cause I think I prefer stuff that's a bit more political and a bit more to do with issues like class and race. And I've done a few shows. So this year, I had a lot before Christmas, so I had like a really busy period where I was constantly busy for about 2 or 3 weeks. Where there was one in the Royal Standard where I took influence from my job. And I was just really interested as to why people stay in jobs that they don't like. Because, like, I know, like, a lot of people there who will go in and just absolutely hate every second. And they won't look for anything else. I was really interested by that, and I was looking at why they didn't like it. And then I realised that they didn't like it mainly because the type of customers that you get. And then when I was looking into that, it was sort of like the whole idea of communication, of how, because it's over the phone, they feel like they're in a different situation, and we are actual people, and they can say what they feel like saying to us then. So I was doing this little performance where I got all dressed up in drag, and then I got my headset on from work, and I pretended to roleplay how a call would work and how that would go. And then after that, I did another one in John's house called Welcome, where I was giving a tour of the house. I know the artwork in there. Well, I say I was doing it, but I kind of just drunk gin instead and just socialised instead. Because I started to wear one of the dresses that I made, and it was really strange. I sort of realised that people automatically assumed that what I was wearing was the actual artwork rather than what I was doing instead. So I was really interested by that, and I just started drinking. I just drank too much gin, didn't actually do the performance I was supposed to be doing, to be fair. So I did that, and then we had a practice degree show in the Gostins, which I decided that I wanted other people to get me ready instead, so I was acting like a human Barbie doll. They had to dress me and everything as well, but I didn't realise that some people felt really uncomfortable doing my makeup for me. Like, I had this one girl where all I gave her was primer to put on my face. Well, she picked it herself because I wouldn't tell them what to use, or what product goes where, or what brushes to use, or anything like that. And she genuinely looked like she was panicking while she was doing it. And I thought that was really strange, because I didn't expect that reaction at all. I thought everyone was just going to just shove like eyeshadow all over my face and not really like try and make it glam at all or anything. There were like people who actually like were really trying their best. Like, oh, I'm really sorry, I'm running your work. And like, no, it's fine, this is what I wanted. Like, I don't know. So I couldn't see what they were doing either. Like, I didn't look in the mirror until everything was fully done. I had like lipstick all the way up to my nose by the end of it, and eyeliner on my lips instead of on my eyes, and so then they had to get me changed as well. And I ended up wearing a skirt as a top over my actual clothes, because no one wanted to take my clothes off for me and get me fully changed, which I wasn't really bothered about. I ended up with 2 left shoes on, and both the heels were a different height, so I couldn't really walk in them properly either. But it was really interesting, because one of the girls there got way too drunk, and she came up to me, she's like, oh no, why are you putting yourself through this? I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, why are you letting other people do this here? You're supposed to be really glam, like you could do so much more than this. I'm like, no, this is what I wanted you to do. It's like, I don't always feel the need to be really extra and like go all out and be really over the top. That isn't really what my personality is like anyway. All the time, I don't think you need to be really overly dramatic. She's like, no, I'll be your #1 fan. Like, you just text me and I'll get the red carpet out for you, and I'll do like a little entrance and like for you and everything, and get everyone like prepped for you. I'm like, no, honestly, it's fine. Like, I'm happy with doing this sort of stuff as well. But I think I just pay really a lot of attention to that stuff, because I sort of like, I've noticed things as I've grown up, how like straight men would talk to me differently as to how they would talk to each other. And like, unless like I come from like a really homophobic like area where I live, and it's all don't really talk to me as a person in a way. Like, it's just really strange. So that it sort of like ties into the whole idea of the male gaze theory, and like how women, when they're watching a TV show, women have to put themselves in the place of a man in their mindset to be able to view that, because that's how it's supposed to be viewed. And sort of because I like men, they sort of see me as a woman instead, in that sort of way, and they sort of speak to me differently. They wouldn't speak to me as they would to each other. Like, I remember I was doing this group project last year, and we made this little video, we just changed the background on it, and we're just putting random images in just for the sake of it, just see how it looks. We have like a picture of like Margaret Thatcher in a bikini or something like that, just we thought it was really funny. And one of the girls went, oh, what relevance does that have in there? Like, feminism? Yeah, definitely. It's definitely feminist. And then I just had one of the guys make like a sly comment. But I was like, why do you think I'm being really serious about this? It's Margaret Thatcher in a bikini. Like, I'm not like trying to actually put more meaning into Margaret Thatcher than there is in that sort of context. We were just testing out images just to go in the background to figure out the scale and stuff like that. So it's just all stuff like that I've noticed. When I was in drag, one of the girls, her boyfriend came up to me speaking to me, and he called me last and I was like, oh, I'm really sorry, I'm not supposed to call that. And I'm like, what? It's not going to make a difference. He's like, oh, just in case. Like, no, it's fine, honestly, I'm not bothered. Like, I'm just doing a performance, I don't think I'm a woman or anything like that. Like, you can call me whatever you want, it won't affect me, it won't bother me really.
So you mentioned when you were younger.
Yeah.
Is this before you were doing drag?
Yeah.
Guys would treat you differently as well?
Yeah, when like they sort of like realise, like, it would sort of, like, you sort of like realise a shift in the conversation and they'd talk to you about different stuff. Or if I, like, they'd have to talk about their sex lives, but if I talked about mine, it'd all of a sudden be uncomfortable. But then I talked about it more because I found it really funny to make them feel that uncomfortable. Because like, if I have to hear about yours, you're going to hear about mine as well. So I've had people telling me I'm going to go to hell, that I'm going to be a disappointment to my parents. Got told I should be burned once as well. I've never had anything physical, luckily. Mainly because of the time that I chose to come out. Like, I had a friend in school who was outed, and things did get physical for him. And I thought I'm not going to hopefully be outed in school, and I wasn't. So I sort of waited till it was safer for me to come out in that sort of sense. But I still had like a backlash, like, but then there's a whole issue of my race coming into it as well, where people are always like, oh, it must be difficult being gay and being Pakistani. I'm like, do you think so? Like, say if I'm out on a night out in a gay bar or something, like, there'll be someone in there it'll be guaranteed that they'll ask me at some point, so what's it like to be gay and Pakistani? I'm like, don't know, I've been like this all my life, so I mean, not really much different. Well, like, oh, that must be really difficult for you. Like, I mean, I could give my whole life story right now, but I'm here to have a good time, not to have a counselling session with you instead. So it's just really, so like my race does always come into play with that as well. And what else have I had? And then apparently, me and my ex used to hold hands quite a bit, and one of my friends noticed that we get stared at quite a lot. But then, because I've always sort of been stared at growing up, because I've always been different, that I never really noticed it. And he's like, yeah, you get stared at quite a lot. I was like, oh really? I didn't really notice at all. But it was sort of stuff like in school, like, where everyone assumed I was gay anyway. Like, I never said it, but they assumed I was anyway, just because my hair was longer than everyone else's. It was literally like this length that it is right now. So stuff like that. So I sort of just learned to ignore it then, so I never really noticed stuff when people are looking or stuff like that. So I did the whole like internalised homophobia stuff where I was like, oh, when a boyfriend that's really straight acting and you can't tell. Then I was like, then I sort of like come from like reading things and like learning more about like feminist theories and like male gaze and all that sort of stuff like that, and realising actually no, why am I saying this when I don't actually mean that, or why am I acting this way if that's not how I actually feel, if I'm just trying to fit in to make other people more comfortable rather than actually just being myself instead. I was like, I've spent so much of my life hiding who I was, that why should I carry on doing that, and why should I try? So the whole thing about straight acting really annoys me, where people describe themselves as that anyway, because it's sort of like because they don't want people to know. And I sort of like opened my mind a bit more. Like I did the whole thing of where like I am gay, but I'm gonna be as far away as possible from stereotype. Where like I got when I was like a massive E1, I got like really into like screamo and like stuff like that. And I wouldn't listen. I hated Beyonce and I hated Nicki Minaj and Lady Gaga and all that, but I actually really loved them anyway. But I was pretending like I didn't for half the time. And then I just like, you know what, it doesn't really matter from the stereotype because I don't really care at the end of the day. Because I don't want to be seen as a stereotype for some reason. I think it's just that I don't want people, like, people's first impression to be when they saw me was that I'm gay. But now I'm just like, it doesn't actually really make a difference at all. It's going to be their first impression. Like, so when I moved here and I got my job here, it was really strange because people didn't realise that I was gay in work for some reason. And like, oh, but you don't sound it. And I never knew how to take that. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, oh, you just don't, probably because of your accent. And I'm like, okay, thank you, I think. And then, like, one of them added me on Facebook and he's like, oh, I can tell straight away that you were gay from your Facebook photos. Like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, it's just the way you pose in them. I kind of just stand there, so, I mean, don't really make an effort to do anything in them, but thank you, I think. But it was just really strange because obviously, because where I live, everyone always assumed I was gay when they first met me. But over here, that wasn't people's first assumption until I said it myself. Because we were sat in on training, and one of them said something, and I was like, so does the CEO have a son? Because I'd really love to get in there with him, do what I can. And they were like, oh, you're gay? I'm like, yeah, definitely. They're like, oh, I couldn't tell. I'm like, okay. Don't really know how to take that, so I'm just going to carry on. But then I get like other people who are like, oh, how do your parents not know you're gay? I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, oh, but it's really obvious. Like, yeah, but they just think that I'm just being the way I am rather than thinking into it. So like, I do get like a mixed reaction. I just find it really strange as people. I feel like they put like a lot more thought into it than they need to. Because I think you get it a lot more with trans people, to be fair, as well. Where like everyone wants to know what their gender. Like if they look at them, and they may have been born as a different gender, they're like really intrigued by it, and they want to know what their name was before, and what the name was before, and what they used to look like, and all that sort of stuff like that. And they're really curious and they really want to know. I think it's a bigger thing with them, whereas with like gay people, it's just like the usual questions of like, so how did you know? Have you ever been with a girl? Oh, but you won't know until are you sure you'll know until you be with a girl? And I was just sit there and go, I think I'm definitely know that I don't want to be with one. Or like, oh, are you sure you're not bi-curious instead? I'm like, no, I'm definitely sure. Or, so when you're in a relationship, who's the girl, who's the guy? I'm like, well, we're both actually guys, that's the whole point of it. Which it's normally a question where they just want to know your actual sexual position instead, really, rather than anything else. So if you're going to date, who pays, and all questions like that, where they're always really intrigued by. And I've had them a million times. I'm just it's just so. Eventually, it just gets to a point like I'm just going to start making up the answers now and being really sarcastic every time I get asked these questions. Like, there's a new guy in work. I think I may be the actual first gay person he's ever met. Because the other day he said to me, are you sure you don't like girls? Like, at all? I was like, yeah, I definitely don't. He's like, but what if you see a really pretty one? I was like, I mean, I can appreciate her face and stuff like that, but I don't want to be with her in a romantic way at all. He's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, I'm 100% sure by now. Like, I've known since I was like 11 probably. So I can probably tell by now. So I come from quite a religious family. So my parents raised me to be a Muslim. One of the big things in that is that homosexuality is wrong. So I thought I hadn't really told them about it. Because I'll hear like slight comments every now and then where say something comes up on TV and they go, oh, that's disgusting or stuff like that. And then and it just gets a bit awkward, so I try to change the subject as quickly as possible. It's not the most pleasant thing, really. Like, I was a really angry teenager. Like, I didn't realise why at the time, or I didn't think I was that bad to be fair at the time either. But I sort of like lashed out a lot and like sort of rebelled, but not really. But like, it always seemed like that in comparison to my brother and my sister, because they were like really good and all they did was like stay at home. Whereas like I'd go out in the field and just drink way too much vodka and not be able to actually make it back home. Or my mum would be like, what time are you coming? I don't know, I'll see. And she'd be like, why? I'm like, I'll see when I get there. And I'd be home. Like, the latest I probably ever turned up was like 4 AM, and that was only once. Whereas usually I'd be home for about 11 PM, and that was way too late for me to come home. And that would be like a whole big thing. But actually, probably the worst one was when I went to Pride once. I ended up texting my mum at like 12, and I was like, yeah, I'm not coming home to see you tomorrow, and then just turned my phone off. She was like, what happened? I was like, I had to stay out for some reason. And she was like, can you please not do that again? Okay, I won't.